Welcome back to Face the Nation. Congressional Democrats are in a stalemate over spending priorities. Progressives say $3.5 trillion worth of social environmental spending is the top priority. Moderates want to finish up that $1 trillion infrastructure package that has passed the Senate and could get a vote in the House this week. Moderates also say the $3.5 trillion price tag is too steep for the other package and needs to be paid for. We're also headed for a government shutdown later this week unless Congress can agree on an extension of funding when the fiscal year ends. So a very busy week ahead of her. And now Pramila Jayapal of Washington is leading the progressives in the House and joins us on set. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Margaret.
Congresswoman, I want to get to this very busy agenda, but first, have your reaction to the conversation we just had on police reform. Senator Scott specifically referred to the city of Seattle, right, in your district, as an example of what goes wrong when you cut funding. The city did cut the police budget 18%. Crime did go up. The mayor has asked for more money. But does the senator have a point when he says this just shows it is not time to reduce funding for police?
Margaret, I just have to take everyone back to 8 minutes and 46 seconds. That's what we're talking about. The 8 minutes and 46 seconds that led to George Floyd's murder, the chokeholds and everything that have been happening across the country with Breonna Taylor. And the reality is we need real accountability. And I think that Senator Scott was just not willing to admit that he doesn't want real accountability for our law enforcement to treat people humanely, with dignity, and we've got to transform public safety in this country, or we are not going to give Black and brown people a fair shot.
And he argued Democrats were the ones to walk away. We're going to check in on that conversation next week again. I want to get onto the business right ahead of you. Democrats control the White House, the Senate, the House, slim majority, as you know. President Biden said to reporters on Friday that he told progressives and moderates who met with him this week that they need to focus less on the number and more on their priorities. Speaker Pelosi said today that it is self-evident this bill will not be $3.5 trillion. Have you agreed to compromise and give up some of your requests?
Yeah, you know, what we've said is we are happy to hear what it is that somebody wants to cut. So far, we have not seen any negotiation back from the Senate. And we understand, Margaret, that we've got to get every Democrat on board in the House and the Senate. We don't have the margins to do anything except that. So we've put out our vision. And I think the key thing is not the top line number. It's what is it that you actually want to fund? Mm-hmm. Because if you want childcare, if you want paid leave, if you want to take on climate change, if you want to repair housing in this country, if you want to make sure people have health care, there's going to be a price tag that goes with it.
So it will be less than $3.5 trillion, as the speaker suggested?
Well, let's talk about what people want, and then let's come to the number from that. It's not just a random number. So if somebody wants less than $3.5 trillion, tell us what you want to cut. Do you want to cut the child care? Do you want to cut paid leave? What is it you want to cut? And then let's figure it out from there. But President Biden also said something very important the other day, which is this is a $0 bill because it's going to be completely paid for with taxes on the wealthiest and the largest.
The Joint Committee on Taxation says actually that in raising this revenue, taxes could go up at least 2% on those making between $200,000 and $500,000 a year. It also will raise taxes for corporations and those who are wealthier. So it's not no cost.
Well, what the president has said is people making under $400,000 will not pay more. We will make sure of that in the package that we put together. But we do want people who are making billions through the profits, not reporting their taxes, not being held accountable by the IRS to pay their fair share. That's really all it is.
When it comes to the things that you have to prioritize, what about free community college? The president threw that out as an example and mentioned means testing, adjusting for cost of living and things like that. Are you open to that?
We're open to whatever negotiation is out there, but on means testing, we saw what happened when we put in tons of barriers in the rental assistance program. People didn't get it. If you have a 25-page document that somebody has to go through to figure out whether or not they qualify, the most vulnerable are not going to get the assistance they need. So I think we should be universal in our programs, make sure people get the benefits immediately, and make it as easy as possible to get this assistance out to the people who need it the most.
I do want to ask you about immigration. Homeland Security said 4,000 Haitians have been forcibly expelled back to their home country. Others, some of them, will be appearing before a judge. Are you satisfied, though, with how the administration is handling this crisis and the fact that they're keeping the same pandemic-era regulations as the Trump administration?
I am not. I think we have a responsibility to be humane and compassionate and create alternatives, pathways for people to be able to get here who are struggling. Sending people back to a country that has been torn apart, where there is no food, no water, no opportunity, is not the way to handle this. So I'm looking for the administration to come out with humane pathways and alternatives in those countries to be able to get people here quickly and to be able to make sure that we are upholding our values as a country.
Congresswoman, good luck in the week ahead. We'll be watching the negotiations. Thank you for
Margaret.
your time today. And we want to dig deeper into the president's challenges. A Gallup poll out this week has his approval at 43%, which is the lowest in his presidency. Who other would we turn to then? Chief Political Analyst John Dickerson, who joins us this morning from New York. John, how are you?
Good morning, Margaret. I'm well.
So Democrats have control here. We knew, as we were just speaking about with the Congresswoman, that there are some disagreements within the party itself. How does the president solve this?
Well, he solves it by convincing the party to do as much as it can, given the tight political realities. The Congresswoman mentioned them. They are those narrow margins in Congress, and they need to do this because failure would be worse. Congresswoman Jayapal gave the progressive view. She represents the progressives. The other side is represented by Terry McAuliffe. He'd like to be governor again in Virginia. He was also chairman of the party, and he told Jonathan Martin of the New York Times, he said, voters didn't send Democrats to Washington to sit around and chitty-chat all day. They need to get this done. He was talking about infrastructure, a host of policies he thinks are important, but he's also making a political case. His argument is the districts that are battlegrounds in the next election and the states that have a more diverse electorate. It's not packed full of progressives, and that Democrats need to appeal to that more diverse electorate. Joe Biden has a lot of challenges, including Republicans that don't want to work with him. But these challenges are all within his own party. Mm-hmm. He's the leader of that party, and these are challenges he has to solve.
Well, you put your finger on why there is this rush to get things done before 2022. But this new poll out from Pew shows that the president's approval rating is down with young voters, some 14 percentage points since July, down 16 points among Latinos, 18 points among African Americans. These groups really help deliver the White House to President Biden. So how can he deal with anger among these particular parts of the electorate?
You know, when you go to a political rally and somebody shouts into a bullhorn, what do we want? Nobody shouts back, incremental progress. The people who turn out in midterm elections, Terry McAuliffe has his view. He says it's a more diverse electorate. What progressives will say is in midterm elections, the people who turn out are your most ardent supporters. And those are the people who really care at a human level about these programs. The Congresswoman was just talking about them. They see the human cost of not having child care paid for or not having a good start in pre-kindergarten. They also wonder what power is worth. If they did all this work to put Joe Biden and the Democrats in power, and these programs are broadly popular, as polling shows, why'd they do all this work if they're getting such weak tea from Washington? And so this is also a challenge for the president. Even if he can get some things passed, he has to worry about those progressives. He needs to be out there working hard. And so one of the challenges will be, even if something gets passed, how the president and the party sort of bind up their own bruises and convince progressives that they got as much as they could and that they should keep fighting.
But, you know, it's not just about the aspirations of what needs to change. It's the lived experience, what people are going through now. On their kitchen tables, they're seeing the cost of food has gone up. You know, they are experiencing some of the economic slowdown. So is it too soon to say that the president is under-delivering, 8 months in? How do we judge where we are now?
Well, there's a paradox in the presidency, which is the president should be judged very heavily because he's the only place everybody can take their complaints. He represents the whole country. And so he should get the pressure of this because it has a political benefit. It motivates his team. It focuses the mind. On the other hand, this president, like all presidents, inherited a whole host of challenges. And so we need to be smart about how we see where those challenges are coming from. Not all of them are coming from the presidency.
John Dickerson, always great to chat with you. Thank you. We'll be right back. The U.S. and China appear headed towards confrontation. To push back against China's military buildup in the Pacific, President Biden brokered a new defense partnership with Australia and will sell its stealth nuclear-powered submarines. That decision came at the expense of U.S. ally France. We spoke with Australia's Prime Minister on Thursday. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
What is the biggest threat you see from China?
Well, we're resilient to foreign interference. We're resilient to whether there are attacks that come from cyber or other forms of foreign interference. Any sovereign country would be.
So why do you need U.S.-made nuclear submarines?
Because Australia's defences depend on having a long reach. I mean, Australia is a long way from everywhere. And in order to ensure that our security interests are best protected, we need to have a long reach and a long range.
But you needed them faster than what the French were delivering you. That's what led to this big diplomatic blow-up with the French. You switched to nuclear-powered submarines that can police longer distances. We're talking about in China's backyard. You need some military support here, no?
Conventional submarines can no longer meet that need with the changed strategic environment in the Indo-Pacific.
You're buying these nuclear submarines. Are you looking at an arms race with China because that is what the Chinese have warned, that is what this is a signal of?
No, what we're doing is we'll be moving from our existing conventional fleet of submarines, our Collins-class submarines, and over time to be able to replace that with a fleet of nuclear submarines.
Because China has built up its military.
With higher capability. There's been an increased militarisation of the Indo-Pacific for many, many years. And we've seen that escalating for some time. And so the escalation predates our decision.
But are you concerned that this could be read by China as a reason to feel more threatened? Do you think this puts a target on your back?
Well, I don't believe it should be. And that's really our point. Australia has every right to take decisions in our sovereign interests, to provide for our defences, to work with our partners, to create a more stable region.
Do you expect retaliation for this?
I see no reason why there should be.
You haven't spoken to the Chinese president in well over a year. Things are not very friendly at the moment.
The phone's always open at our end. The door's always open at our end. There is no Australian obstacle to direct dialogue at a political level between Australia and China. But that opportunity, the China side have not shown an interest in, but they're always welcome when they'd wish to.
Would he take your call?
Whose?
Have you tried to call the Chinese president?
Those opportunities have been available for years. But that's not something they're interested in at the moment. That's their choice.
He doesn't want to take a call right now?
No.
How real is the threat of a hot war, of military conflict in your region of the world?
I certainly don't see it as inevitable, and I think it's all completely avoidable. Those issues, though, are going to be resolved principally between the United States and China.
So the French government made clear they were not happy they lost this contract for submarines. Sure. And the US and Australia, the UK as well, have inked one. A defense contractor in France says it's sending you a bill for $66 billion. Yeah, well, do you intend to pay that?
I think that's a rather extraordinary claim. It's simple.
Do you think there's any wrongdoing?
No. We had a contract for procuring submarines that had gates in the contract, which gave us the option. Had we proceeded, then as Prime Minister I would have been negligent because I would have been going forward with a massive and very costly contract that would not have done the job that Australia needed to be done.
Do you regret not being more transparent or direct when you... Australians are known for being direct.
We are.
Why weren't you direct with the French president?
Well, you should be
saying
assuming I was.
You're going to lose this.
And I have been. We were very clear that we had deep concerns that conventional submarines would no longer do the job. We had discussions about that. And at the end of the day, we didn't see the situation the same. French obviously thought that their submarine could still do the job. We didn't believe that was the case. And as a result, we decided not to proceed.
Australia is one of the few Western democracies that has really put in place some very, very strict COVID protocols. You shut down your borders 18 months ago.
Sorry.
When will they reopen? Are you going to have vaccine passports? When will Australians be able to leave?
We will see our international borders, particularly for Australians to leave and return, and Australians who are overseas have been vaccinated to return, and that will occur before the end of the year. It could happen well before that. With the vaccines, that is improving our resilience, and we'll be able to open up those borders. But I'll tell you what shutting those borders did. It saved over 30,000 lives in Australia. It's around about 1,200 Australians have lost their lives to COVID. That is what is lost in a day here in the United States.
Culturally, there's this huge difference. You talk about shutting your borders. You will go into quarantine when you return home to Australia.
Correct.
Do you think less liberty is medically necessary? We have a huge argument over that in this country. Why did you think it was worth it in Australia?
30,000 lives is the simple answer.
People in this country won't wear masks.
That's a matter for the United States.
But what do you attribute that difference culturally to?
Well, look, we're different societies. I think we are different societies. I mean, we're great friends, and we share beliefs and values that we hold dear. We're a very pragmatic nation, and I can tell you, the virus doesn't care what you believe. The virus cares about how it can come and take your life. And in Australia, we've introduced what we believe are practical controls that have saved tens of thousands of lives. And I think that the proof of those decisions is in the results.
The Delta variant is really challenging. Some of the record, though. I mean, Sydney, again, in lockdown.
True.
In Melbourne this week, you did have some protests against mandates. So is there just sort of an exhaustion level here politically that makes it difficult for you to try to control the virus?
The Delta variant is the game changer. We have had a lot of success with COVID in managing the virus pre-Delta, but when Delta hit, it changed everything. And so regrettably, we've had lockdowns in our two biggest cities, in Sydney and Melbourne now for many months. And we're looking forward to the end of that, and those restrictions are already starting to ease, and the vaccination program, which has been running successfully. Our rates of vaccination on a daily basis per capita have even exceeded those that were achieved in the United States and the United Kingdom at their peak. And so that is getting us to a place where we'll be able to open again.
We'll be back in a moment. We also spoke with Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan during his trip to the U.S. last week. Turkey was a U.S. ally in Afghanistan, where Turkish forces had protected the Kabul airport before the U.S. withdrew. We asked Erdogan about working with the new Taliban government. You said back in August, for sure, the Taliban's views won't be the same as they were 20 years ago. But the Taliban is only letting boys go back to school, not girls. They've told women not to show up for work in government positions. It doesn't look like the Taliban has evolved. Can you do business with a government like this?
Kadına bakışı
Madam,
bu konuda bellidir.
Turkey's approach to women's issues is quite
Bizde
well known.
kadın hayatın her
Women
yerinde vardır.
are present in every aspect of life. Our views would apply to Afghanistan as well. Whenever women become more involved, more active in every aspect of life, we can support them
Biz Afganistan'a da bu desteği
if they would need us in healthcare, in security, and in other walks of life. And if they need, we could support them in terms of education in our country.
So it sounds like you don't want to do business with the Taliban at this point.
Bu saydığım konularla ilgili olarak
About the issues that I've just listed, if they shall be agreed on, if they will be accepted and recognized, we can do business. But if not, we won't do business with them.
President Biden is a constant critic of human rights abuses. Has he ever asked you to improve your treatment of journalists or anything specific?
hayır olmadığı gibi
No, he
bizim de bu
didn't.
konuda zaten sorunumuz yok.
And because we don't have any problems of that nature,
Özgürlükler noktasında
in terms of
Türkiye
freedoms,
buralarla mukayese edilemeyecek
Turkey
kadar
is
çok daha özgürdür.
incomparably free.
Well, the Committee to Protect Journalists says that you rank second only to China when it comes to jailing journalists. Worse than Iran, worse than Saudi Arabia.
Kusura bakmasınlar, bunların hiçbirini
Well, sorry then, I
ben
won't
kabul etmiyorum.
accept this.
Ve bu dediğiniz
And these
derneklerin,
associations,
cemiyetlerin
these unions,
belirlemelerini, bunların
statements
ortaya koyduğu
and
tespitleri
disclosures
de
are not shared by
paylaşmıyorum.
me
Çünkü
because
Türkiye'nin böyle
Turkey
bir
doesn't
durumu
have such a
yok.
situation.
Well, human rights lawyers say you have 100,000 Turkish citizens who've been investigating just for insulting you.
Siz bunlara inanıyorsunuz.
Do you believe these?
International
bunlara
organizations, credible ones, are coming out with these
olabilir.
statements.
Ben o dediğiniz uluslararası
Well,
güven dediğiniz kurumlara
I know those credible international organizations that have no credit for
The
me.
United States government has said these things.
bakın sizi de aldatıyorlar.
Well, you are
Siz de
being
bunlara
deceived actually, and you are led to
Bunları
believe.
kaynağında araştırıyor musunuz?
Are you looking at the source of these allegations? Are you researching
kaynağında
these
araştırın.
claims? Please
Sorun
do
bakalım.
if you're not.
You think
Ask
the U.S.
these
State
questions.
Department is not credible when it criticizes human rights abuses in Turkey?
Düşünmüyorum tabii.
Oh, I don't.
Çünkü bunun benim düşünebilmem
Because
için
in order for me to
kendi
believe that it's a
ülkemin Dışişleri
credible
Bakanlığı'nın
claim or a
tespitleri
statement,
benim için çok daha önemli.
my country's organizations' actual findings are important.
When you came to Washington in 2017, you were on camera when you were watching those protesters get beaten, those American protesters. There were Secret Service officers who were injured as a result. Do you understand that in the eyes of the American public, that's completely unacceptable?
Kusura bakmayın.
Well,
Özellikle
sorry, but
orada Amerikalı
there,
güvenlik değil, tam aksine
not the Secret Service,
oradaki
and
Türk
as press
vatandaşlarına yapılan
members,
saldırıyı
please consider the
özellikle
attacks against the Turkish
gündeminize
citizens.
taşıyın.
But I'm talking about the video that was shown in households around this country when they turned on the evening news. They saw you
videoda
stand
kim
there
kimdir?
while those protesters were being beaten.
O
Do you
videoda-
understand why that hurt
Kusura
Turkey?
bakmayın, ben orada durmuyordum. Ben bir
I
defa
wasn't
o
standing there.
esnada kesinlikle
I wasn't standing there.
Büyükelçilik binamdan oraları takip ettim. Böyle bir
I
şey
was
yok.
just following the incidents, but I wasn't standing
Burada
there.
dürüst olmak gerekir.
We need to
Doğru
be
konuşmak
honest.
Did you
We
approve
need to
of it?
speak the
Ben o
truth.
kalabalığın içerisinde
And
falan
I
değildim.
was not inside that crowd.
Was that appropriate?
On the contrary,
Bizim vatandaşlarımıza
our
karşı
citizens were attacked.
Amerikan bir defa güvenlik ekiplerinin hepsinin
And the American security
vatandaşlarımıza
forces
yönelik saldırısı vardı.
aggressively attacked the Turkish
Ve bunu
citizens.
da ben Amerikalıları yetkililere
And I told
aktardım,
this to
söyledim.
the American authorities.
We'll be right back. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.